Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 13th episode of Don't Forget the Popcorn. Today, we will be ranking Quentin Tarantino movies. Just like in last week's Paul Thomas Anderson ranking, we will go bottom to top with an overall score out of 10 of each film. Before I reveal number one, I will give my overall opinion on the director. This list will only contain his 10 features, not movies he's written or been a part of, so no True Romance, From Dusk Till Dawn, etc. Also, Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2 will be their own separate movies, even though they are often counted as one. So, let's get into Quentin Tarantino ranked. Number 10, The Hateful Eight, 2015. The Hateful Eight, it's a good movie, okay? It is number 10, it's at the bottom of this list, but it doesn't mean it's a bad film. I like The Hateful Eight, I enjoy it. It's a bit long, but honestly, it's one of those long ones that doesn't feel that long. For a movie that takes place pretty much in one room and is mostly dialogue, it's a pretty entertaining film. I like it. It's a fun movie. It's nice to see Sam Jackson get a nice starring role in this movie. You know, he's been a long-time collaborator. You get a great performance from Kurt Russell, a good performance from Sam. You know, you got some heavy hitters in here. You get a nice performance from Tim Roth. Um, it's a good movie. It's fun, cool little western. I think, you know, as a follow-up to Django, it was a good effort, but it doesn't touch Django, which we'll discuss that movie later on this list. But overall, The Hateful Eight's a great film. If you haven't seen it, if you're a Tarantino fan, it's definitely worth the watch. It's got all the good Tarantino stuff in it. You know, it's got some. So it's a western. So you know, you got some racism in here. You got some crazy violence. You got all the fun stuff in a typical Tarantino film. You know, so overall, I'm gonna give The Hateful Eight a 7.3 out of 10. Number 9, Jackie Brown, 1997. Jackie Brown is Tarantino's ode to the blaxploitation genre. He was a big fan of those movies, you know, Foxy Brown back in the day, and you know, like Big Mama White or Black Mama White Mama, you know, just movies like that. Uh, you know, the Mac and all those films. If you've watched any of those, all those fun old school 70s blaxploitation films. And this was his take on one and his version. And it's great. I love Jackie Brown. Jackie Brown's a great film. It's a fun movie. You get a great performance from the incredible, beautiful Pam Grier. She was at the top of her game in this movie. You know, she was a badass, you know, and she looks great in this movie. I love Sam Jackson in this movie. You get one of the most interesting, kind of weird, stoic performances from Robert De Niro in here. This is one of Robert De Niro's most interesting roles. Um, I think it's one of his more weird, kind of like just I don't know. It was just a different side of De Niro, but I like what Tarantino got from in this movie. Uh, this is a fun film. It's a good movie. Cool little story. Not a whole lot of crazy violence. It's definitely dialed down from your typical Tarantino film as far as the violence goes, and a lot of the crazy stuff in it. It's actually, I think it's honestly one of his more tame films as far as the violence, and I mean, you know, it's got language in it, but it's not as crazy as all his other films. I think it's more of one of his chill ones and one of the more simple kind of chill plots where the stakes aren't as high as all his other films. But this is an awesome film. If you haven't seen Jackie Brown, it's definitely worth a watch. Um, Overall, I'm going to give Jackie Brown a 7.6 out of 10. Number 8, Kill Bill Volume 2, 2004. Now, I know people are wondering why I'm already talking about Kill Bill Volume 2 when there's probably other movies on this list that they would put behind this one. Do not get me wrong, I love Kill Bill Volume 2. Kill Bill Volume 2 is awesome. Texas Funeral, come on man, it's one of the coolest scenes ever. The, I don't want to spoil any of these movies if you haven't seen them, but if you're watching this movie or this video, excuse me, you've probably seen all these movies on this list. So, you know, what happens to Daryl Hannah, crazy. Great film. Good movie. My only issue with it is Kill Bill Volume 2, I don't think it holds the same tone and energy that one does. Um, One, I think, kept a pace and kept the foot on the gas in a really nice way. And I think two loses some of that momentum. But two is awesome and it's a great sequel. And I know Tarantino intended to make these as one cohesive film. I think it was smart to break it up. Just because if this was if these movies were just smashed together as just like from start to finish, it played as one and two, I think it would lose a lot of value as far as an overall film because I do feel like there's a tonal shift. I love the conclusion of the film though. It's a great conclusion. It's a conclusion that we want. It's a conclusion that you want from a movie like this. But overall, I do think it isn't as fun or as original feeling as the first one. And maybe it does fall victim to not being as a part of the first film as far as one whole piece, but I do think it would have been a little much to have this movie be 4+ hours. So I think it was smart to break it up into two films. And they probably made more money that way. But Kill Bill 2 is awesome, man. You got some great, great action. Uma's at the top of her game yet again. Great film overall. But we'll talk about Kill Bill 1 later. All right. I'm going to give Kill Bill Volume 2 a 7.7 out of 10. Number 7, Death Proof, 2007. And I know a lot of people don't like Death Proof. I love Death Proof. Death Proof is great. And honestly, if some of his movies weren't just so what they are, Death Proof would probably be a lot higher on this list. Death Proof is a great film. I think Death Proof is so fun. Kurt Russell is freaking hilarious. He's insane. He's weird. Oh my Lord, he's over the top, and he makes you laugh so much. And I think he answered the assignment so perfectly. You get some great, great dialogue in here from a lot of these beautiful ladies in this movie. You got gorgeous women all in this movie. So great visuals to look at, even more than what you're, typically seeing out of a movie. This movie's fun, man. It's a cool, like, little revenge story. It's just a fun movie. This was Tarantino just having fun. This movie doesn't have a crazy plot. It doesn't have a crazy deep meaning. It doesn't redefine history or change time or any of that stuff. This is just a fun little, action thriller movie that really means or amounts to nothing. But I think that's the beauty of this film. Death Proof is just fun. I love Death Proof so much. I could watch Death Proof anytime. That's one of those Tarantino movies you can just throw on and I can watch whenever. It's just that fun. So, guys, if I don't know why people hate on Death Proof so much. People say they like, out of the Planet Terror Death Proof era, people say they like Planet Terror a lot more. Don't get me wrong, I love Planet Terror. I love Robert Rodriguez. I think he's one of the most underrated directors. Planet Terror is awesome. I like Death Proof more personally. That's just me. But everyone's entitled to their opinions. Guys, don't crucify me. But I gotta give Death Proof overall an 8 out of 10. Number 6, Kill Bill Volume 1, 2003. Kill Bill Volume 1 is probably the first exceptional film on the Tarantino ranking. Probably from this point on, I think we're going to be really hitting on his hard hitters. Kill Bill 1 is a landmark. Kill Bill 1 is one of the coolest, most stylized revenge movies you've ever seen. And it's cool because you got it from the take of this very interesting woman, not a typical lady. Uma Thurman, she's not your typical female lead I think you would see in a role like this, but she kills it. She kills it. She kills it. And she just the way she just operates in this movie really makes you think this woman kills people for a living. You would think Uma Thurman is on the streets chopping people's heads off, slicing people in half, putting people down with no problem. This movie just builds some great suspense. It's got some dope action sequences. The anime sequences in here are freaking dope. Like, it's just it's just a fun ass movie, but the stakes are super high and you feel it and you just want this woman to succeed so much as you're watching it. You just are like, get him, get him. And the scene with the crazy 88 dudes, that stuff is insane, man, and it's just the way it was shot and the colors he used and the way he played with lights and everything was just this was the direction in this was just unreal, man. Quentin was at the top of his game in this movie, and it feels so crazy putting this movie so low on the list because this is easily one of my favorite films. I could watch Kill Bill 1 anytime. I do think it's a lot better than the second one. And, I only got it a couple movies back behind this, but like I said, it's just because, Tarantino's work is what it is. So Kill Bill Volume 1, overall, I'm gonna give it 8.2 out of 10. Number 5, Reservoir Dogs, 1992. Reservoir Dogs and Kill Bill were I went back and forth, but I had to put Reservoir Dogs here just because the influence this movie has had on cinema over the years it's insane, man. Everyone was chasing Reservoir Dogs for a few years until, his next movie. Reservoir Dogs is it's honestly it's one of the first movies I think people really appreciated dialogue from. The opening scene, when they're at the diner and they're talking about the Madonna song and they're just having a conversation that regular people would have. And this is one of the first movies where I think dialogue was used in a way to really capture our attention because in your head, that stuff you're like, yeah, that's stuff me and my boys actually talk about. Where I think in a lot of movies, the dialogue is very unrealistic to real life. Where I think Tarantino really is one of the first directors to really make dialogue feel real. Make anyone, I think that's why his films can resonate with so many people. And most people, no matter what kind of movies they like, can enjoy them is because of this great dialogue. And you get that throughout this entire film. The conversation these people have, it's very believable. It's very believable. And this is a fun movie. It's a heist movie where you don't see a heist. You don't see the heist. Yet you feel the weight and the consequences of a heist. And it's all because of these incredible performances, all right? All the Mr. Colored people, Mr. Blonde. Oh my God, come on. You get great performances from everybody. My man Steve Buscemi is at the top of his game. Come on. Harvey Keitel at the top of his game. Everybody's going hard in this movie. You get a brilliant performance from Tim Roth. Oh my God, everybody bodies their role in this movie. And this movie is so simple that you can tell he was working with a very, very small budget. But he really made the most out of this movie with what he had. And I think this movie showcases his talent more than any of his other films. Even though obviously he has better movies, he has more grand movies that are, going to be talked about much more. This movie shows you what he could do at a very young age with just a talented mind, and some talented actors, because this movie is very simplistic as far as the plot, as far as what's going on, as far as the use of scenery and sets. All that stuff is simple in this movie, and it all works. I'm going to give Reservoir Dogs an 8.4 out of 10. Number 4, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, 2019. All right. I know a lot of people did not like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood upon its release, but now that it has been out for a few years, I think this movie has gained some very positive traction. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is an excellent film. It's a great film. It's funny. It's got everything you want out of a movie. All right. You got some dramatic action going on. You got some action going on. It's got Western vibes. It's got the goofy little silly, buddy bromance thing going on between Brad and Leo. And these guys are at the top of their game in this movie. They are both so funny. They both bring it, and they both got Brad won the Oscar for Best Supporting, and Leo got the nom. They got him for a reason, and Quinn's take on the whole Charles Manson deal and Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski and all that. His take on that was just a fun take, and it was cool. And this movie just shows you how talented this man is, especially when it comes to periods and changing history and writing his own version of it and making something fun out of it. I love when people can just create something that they're influenced by and make something of their own of it. When we watch something that deals with historical themes, they don't always have to be right to the letter, And I think Tarantino made something fun and something magical with this movie. This movie makes you reflect on your own life, and it shows you, hey, it's never too late. It's never too late. You never know what could happen in your life. Positive things come out of the weirdest situations. And this film's just fun, man. It's just a fun movie. I just love Leo as Rick Dalton here. He is freaking hilarious. I'm going to give Once Upon a Time in Hollywood an 8.8 out of 10. Number 3, Inglourious Bastards, 2009. First things first, Christoph Waltz. That's what I'm going to start with. Hans Landa, one of the scariest dudes of all time. One of the best villainous performances we've ever seen. That opening scene, he makes your skin crawl. He makes you scared. I started sweating when I first saw that movie, man. I was sweating because I was so freaking scared. I had no freaking idea what this man was gonna do to, because he knew they were, it's, Inglourious Bastards. A lot of people, they have their issues with this movie, and I have mine too. It's not a perfect film, but god damn it, this movie is fun as hell, man, and it's hilarious. Love Brad Pitt in this movie. I just love the way he, portrayed this character and kind of invented him. He's hilarious. We're at Nazis. Like, his little voice and just the way he is, and you have to love it. But the real star of the show is Christoph Waltz in this movie. He carries this film, and he terrifies you to the core. And everybody's at the top of their game in this movie. They're like, and come on, like Michael Fassbender's at the top of his game. Like everyone, man. Eli Roth. Like, I just had so much fun with this movie. And every time I watch this movie, just have a good time. You got a cool little love story in the backdrop of this movie. It's just, you got some weird politics, and it's got everything you want and a weird take on, the World War II era. And I just got to give Tarantino mad credit for, taking all the risk he takes with these films, all the liberties and the ambitions. You can't deny that, and you got to give somebody credit for that. And what he pulls off is just insane, man. Inglourious Bastards, it's a classic. Do I have my problems with it? Could it be a little shorter? Sure. But it's a dope movie, man. It's a great film. I'm going to give Inglourious Bastards an 8.9 out of 10. Number 2. And I know people are going to, they're going to get on me. Number 2, Pulp Fiction, 1994. Pulp Fiction, I think I'm being biased here and not putting this at number one. Obviously, process of elimination, you already know what number one is, and we're going to talk about it. But right now, Pulp Fiction is one of my favorite movies. It's one of the best movies ever made, one of the most influential movies ever made. This movie changed the game in so many ways. It shows you how to tell a non-linear story and make it legit, make it seem real, and still make it flow. And uh, Pulp Fiction is just, it's one of the weirdest, most creative, most like what the screenplays you could ever, see. And Tarantino brought this movie to life in one of the most inventive ways. His influences are all over the place, but he brings them together in such a way that it just creates his own style. When you watching a Tarantino film, his style really came to life in this movie. And people tried to make Pulp Fiction so many times, in their own way, and it just didn't work. They all don't work. Only other movie I think that tells non-linear storytelling as well as this is maybe Momentum, from Christopher Nolan. But Pulp Fiction is one of the most incredible rides you're ever going to take watching a film. You get one of the coolest, slickest performances from Samuel L. Jackson. You get one of the most vulnerable yet tough-hardened performances from John Travolta. You get one of the most kind of laid-back yet badass performances from Bruce Willis. You get one of the, dopest enforcer, tough guy, boss type roles from Vin Rames. You get the cool, femme fatale role from Uma Thurman here as Mia Wallace. One of the most legendary performances and legendary characters of all time. This movie's got it all, man. It's got drama, violence, action, drugs, sex, dancing, rock and roll. It's got everything. Like, everything's in this movie. Like, everything's all in one film. I don't know how you get so much in one film and yet it all just works so well. And every scene in this movie, even when the scenes are like, why is this here? They all play their part in telling this weird, interesting story. And ultimately, Pulp Fiction, if you ask me like what's the overall message of Pulp Fiction, I guess I would tell you that you have to, I think the overall message here is look at what's in front of you and listen to what everything around you is telling you. Just based on how the movie ends and the things that happen to get there, because it's non-linear. So the movie, you kind of got to pick it apart and think about it if you were watching it in order. But if this movie played out in order, it wouldn't be as good. I just know it wouldn't, because you get shocked every time because something happens and then it cuts to something totally different and it just shocks you every time. It keeps you on edge. And by the end, everything just falls together. I just don't know how he did it with this one. It's incredible. People are still chasing Pulp Fiction. This movie got robbed for a lot of awards. It got a bunch of nominations, but it lost to a lot of stuff it probably shouldn't have. This movie stood the test of time, probably better than almost any 90s film. So, guys, if you have not seen Pulp Fiction, turn this video off and just go watch that, man. That's going to be better than the rest of my video. I'm going to give Pulp Fiction a 9.4 out of 10. Now, before I reveal number one, Quentin Tarantino is one of the best directors of all time. I've made a best directors of all time list. Tarantino is on that list. Check that video out if you want to see that. Talk a little bit more in detail about him, what he's done for us and what he's blessed us with in the world of film and cinema. We couldn't thank him enough, okay? And I just love him for all the risks, liberties he takes. He does not care. People criticize him for his use of the N word in his films. Can it be gratuitous? Sure. But that's art. That's filmmaking. You got to do what you got to do, and you got to present your message in the way you feel it needs to be put out there. And he does that every time, and I love him for it. And it's just so creative and it's ingenious, you know. Tarantino, one of the best all time, and fortunately, his next movie is probably going to be his last one. So I can't wait to see what he blesses us with next. Guys, number one, Django Unchained, 2012. Django Unchained. I know a lot of people think Pulp Fiction should probably be number one on any Tarantino ranking list. But the reason I'm going to put Django Unchained at number one is because, one, I'm a little biased with Django. But two, Django is probably Tarantino's best overall story and most cohesive from start to finish. That has a great first, second, third act that all makes sense in a nice linear way. And it's a great, compelling story that anyone can get behind. You could be the most racist guy ever, but you could probably watch Django and still find it to be a very entertaining, good story. Because it is, okay? Django tells the story of a slave who is rescued by a German bounty hunter who needs his help in order to find these guys. In exchange, this bounty hunter is going to pay him and help him find his long lost loved wife. And it's a wild ride from there. And Django is one of the coolest stories of love, revenge, and just freedom. And it's just freaking hilarious. You just can't, you would never think a movie about racism, a movie about slavery, a movie with such violent, cruel, gruesome imagery would be so funny and heartwarming all at the same time. Django is one of the rare films to do that. Django is kind of like Shawshank Redemption. When you watch the Shawshank Redemption, you're like, this movie is effed. Like this everything. Oh my, what am I seeing? Yeah, by the end, you just want to clap and you feel so warm and fuzzy inside, and it was one of the best times of your life. That is what Django is like. That's what watching Django is like. Django is one of the best movies ever made. I love Django. It's one of my personal favorites. I love Django so much. So yes, I'm a little bit biased when it comes to Django Unchained, but I think everyone can agree that Django is easily in Tarantino's top three. It's his best constructed film from start to finish and one of his best stories. And it's one of his best stories that flows very nicely. And it's something we can all get behind. And yet again, you get an Oscar winning performance from Christoph Waltz. He was an asshole in Inglourious Bastards, and he's the best in Django. He's amazing. King Schultz, come on. He's awesome, man. You get a great performance from Jamie Foxx. You get a bone-chilling, yet funny and lovable, yet hateable and distasteful performance from Leonardo DiCaprio. Samuel L. Jackson makes you want to kill him in this movie. Kerry Washington's at the top of her game. Everyone in this movie is at the top of their game, including the great Quentin Tarantino. I'm going to give Django Unchained a rock solid 10 out of 10. Guys, I hope you enjoyed my Quentin Tarantino ranked. Make sure you drop your Quentin Tarantino ranked in the comments. Tell me your favorite films. Tell me what you think of my list. Follow me on TikTok, like and subscribe, and I'll be back next week. And don't forget the popcorn.